You're not going to believe what happened in Georgia. In 2022, a woman did something so horrifying, so unthinkable, that it stopped the entire town in its tracks. A newborn left to die in a trash bag, discarded like garbage. But here's the twist. What happened next is even more shocking. The story behind it is more than just a crime. It's a tragedy that reveals a deeper, darker truth. Was it a desperate act of a mother or something else entirely? What led her to make this life-altering decision? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just the details of a crime, it's the aftermath, the investigation, and the chilling consequences that followed. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Keep watching. The story of Sarah Miller, who abandoned her newborn in a trash bag behind a convenience store in Marietta, Georgia, in December 2022, shocked both the local community and the wider public. This event, however, was more than just a crime. It was the tragic result of years of mental health struggles, isolation, and a system that failed to provide the support Sarah desperately needed. The details surrounding Sarah's actions and the investigation that followed reveal a complex web of psychological distress, societal failure, and the long-lasting effects on everyone involved. On a cold December night, the normally peaceful suburban town of Marietta found itself at the center of a tragedy. Around 9:00 p.m., a local resident called 911 to report a horrifying discovery. A newborn baby, abandoned in a trash bag, was found in an alley behind a convenience store. The baby was so small and fragile that it appeared to have been born only hours before. Its color was pale blue, and it still had remnants of the umbilical cord. Miraculously, the infant was still alive, but barely. First responders rushed the baby to the hospital, where medical teams fought to stabilize the child. Despite the trauma, the baby managed to cling to life, but the physical and emotional damage was immense. Investigators quickly determined that this was no random act. Surveillance footage from a nearby camera showed a woman, later identified as 23-year-old Sarah Miller, calmly walking away from the scene. She appeared detached and unhurried, offering no sign of distress or awareness of the gravity of her actions. The images sent shockwaves through the town, leaving residents questioning how someone could commit such a heartless act, especially a mother. The police launched a swift investigation into the crime. The footage of Sarah walking away from the scene was key evidence. Despite the clarity of the images, it took some time to identify Sarah Miller. The police released a public appeal, and tips quickly began to pour in, identifying her from the video and noting her troubled behavior in the days leading up to the crime. Sarah's mental health was also brought up in conversations with locals who had seen her walking the streets of Marietta in the days before the incident. With this information in hand, the police tracked Sarah to a small apartment she had been renting on the outskirts of town. When they arrived, they found her mother, who confirmed that Sarah had been living with her but had recently been staying alone. Sarah's mother expressed concern about her daughter's emotional state, describing her as being in the midst of significant mental health struggles. At first, Sarah wasn't at home, but the police eventually found her sitting at a bus stop a few miles away. Her demeanor was calm, almost eerily so. When the officers approached, she showed no signs of resistance, as if she had been expecting them. At the police station, Sarah's initial responses were robotic, but as the interrogation progressed, the truth began to emerge. Sarah revealed the depth of her emotional pain, explaining how she had been struggling with severe mental health issues, including untreated depression, isolation, and anxiety. Her pregnancy had spiraled out of control, and she felt overwhelmed by shame and fear of becoming a mother. The emotional burden of carrying a child as a single woman, combined with her deteriorating mental state, had become unbearable. Sarah's actions were not the result of malice, but of a deeply troubled mental state. Her confession shed light on a woman overwhelmed by years of untreated mental illness, compounded by the isolation of a secret pregnancy. From an early age, Sarah had struggled with depression and anxiety. These emotional issues were never adequately addressed, and as time went on, her mental state deteriorated. She described feeling disconnected from reality, as though she was trapped in a fog of hopelessness. Depression, which often manifests as a profound sense of worthlessness and despair, played a central role in Sarah's decision. She spoke of feeling utterly detached from her emotions, unable to see any way out of the crushing weight of motherhood. She viewed the pregnancy not as a new life, but as an insurmountable obstacle, one that made her feel unworthy of being a mother. Her perception of unplanned motherhood was colored by deep shame, which made her retreat further into herself. The most chilling aspect of Sarah's story was her sense of detachment from reality. She admitted that, in the days leading up to the abandonment, she had felt like she was living outside her body, unable to comprehend the magnitude of her actions. This emotional dissociation, a coping mechanism often employed during moments of extreme distress, meant that Sarah was not fully aware of the consequences of abandoning her newborn. She described her actions as an impulse, a reflex born from emotional paralysis rather than a conscious decision to harm. Mental health experts have confirmed that untreated depression can impair judgment and lead to extreme actions. For Sarah, the emotional distress had overwhelmed her ability to reason and process the reality of what she was doing. She had no support system, no one to turn to for help, and she saw no way out. Her family, while supportive, didn't know how to help her with the growing crisis, and societal stigma around mental health made it even harder for her to reach out. The crime and its aftermath reverberated through Marietta, leaving the community grappling with a complex mix of emotions. The discovery of the abandoned newborn shocked the town, a place known for its peaceful suburban charm. People were horrified by the idea of a mother discarding her own child in such a callous manner, but as the investigation unfolded, the community was forced to confront a more complicated reality. Sarah's actions were the result of years of emotional suffering and untreated mental illness. The emotional toll on the community was significant. Parents, especially, found it hard to reconcile their own experiences of parenthood with the tragic abandonment of a newborn. Many people began questioning the systems in place to support struggling parents, especially those dealing with mental health challenges. Community leaders organized discussions about mental health awareness and the need for better support systems for individuals in crisis. People also rallied around the baby, who miraculously survived the ordeal. The community raised funds to help cover the child's medical expenses and to offer support to Sarah's family, despite the crime that had been committed. For Sarah's family, the aftermath was even more complicated. Her mother, who had been close to Sarah, expressed deep shock and confusion. While Sarah's mother had always known her daughter struggled emotionally, she had never imagined that Sarah would commit such a heinous act. The family was torn between their love for Sarah and their horror at what she had done. They were faced with the grief of seeing their daughter's life shattered, while also experiencing deep sorrow for the child who had been abandoned. As the case moved through the legal system, it quickly became clear that the trial would not be straightforward. Sarah was charged with child abandonment and aggravated assault, with the possibility of murder charges depending on the outcome of the baby's condition. The prosecution argued that Sarah had acted out of malice and a disregard for her child's life. They presented the surveillance footage showing Sarah walking away from the scene with no visible signs of distress, suggesting that she was fully aware of her actions. The defense, however, focused on Sarah's mental health, arguing that she had been in a state of extreme emotional distress at the time of the crime. Expert witnesses testified that Sarah had been suffering from untreated postpartum depression, which had severely impaired her judgment. They explained that Sarah's actions were the result of a psychological crisis rather than a deliberate act of cruelty. The defense also argued that Sarah had no history of violent behavior and had been deeply affected by her family's history of mental illness. The jury ultimately found Sarah guilty of aggravated assault and child abandonment, but the charge of murder was not brought forward. Sarah was sentenced to 20 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment during her incarceration. The verdict was met with mixed reactions. Some felt that the sentence was just, considering the severity of the crime. Others felt that Sarah's mental health struggles should have been taken into greater consideration when determining her sentence. The case sparked a broader discussion about the intersection of mental health and criminal behavior. Mental health advocates argued that Sarah's case highlighted the urgent need for better mental health care and support systems. They pointed out that if Sarah had received proper treatment, the tragedy could have been prevented. On the other hand, some members of the public felt that Sarah's actions were unforgivable, regardless of her mental state, and called for a harsher sentence. In the years following her conviction, Sarah's life was forever changed. She was placed in a facility that specialized in mental health treatment for incarcerated individuals, where she began to receive therapy for her depression, trauma, and postpartum issues. While some saw Sarah as a victim of her circumstances, others viewed her as a criminal who had made an irreversible decision. Her case became a reminder of the complexities surrounding mental illness and crime, and the need for better mental health care and rehabilitation within the justice system. Sarah Miller's story is a tragic example of the intersection between untreated mental illness and criminal behavior. It serves as a call to action for society to address the gaps in mental health care, particularly for vulnerable individuals like Sarah who may not have access to the support they need. Mental health awareness, early intervention, and stronger support systems are crucial in preventing tragedies like this one. Sarah's case should serve as a wake-up call. It's not enough to simply acknowledge mental health issues. Society must prioritize providing the necessary resources and support systems before people reach a breaking point. Sarah's tragedy could have been avoided if she had received the help she needed earlier. The lesson is clear. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and those who struggle with mental health conditions deserve understanding and compassion, not judgment and isolation. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out for help. There's no shame in seeking support, and it can make all the difference in preventing a crisis. Let's work together to create a society where people feel safe seeking help and where mental health is prioritized. If you found this video thought-provoking, share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Leave your thoughts in the comments. How can we, as a community, better address mental health and prevent stories like Sarah's from happening again? And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content on important issues that impact us all. Together, we can make a change. Thank you for watching, and remember, taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. Let's start the conversation today. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. We'll see you again soon here on Unsolved Case Vault.